So now here we are at today's lecture, so I managed to do that in a few minutes. So today we're going to be talking about cognitive health. It's something that's becoming more and more important, and so I'm going to just give a few little facts. My lectures, if you come to them in the future, you're going to find I really like to get to the nitty-gritty of what can you do. So I don't focus a lot on pathology and, what causes the problem. Instead, I really like to focus on, okay, what can I do at home that's inexpensive and high yield that will help me, right, with whatever the topic of the presentation is, in this case, cognitive health. And you're going to find, if you go to my lectures also, there's a lot of overlap. I'm going to say a lot of the same things, like a lot of you who've gone to my lectures will know that I bring up glycine practically at every single lecture, so just be ready for some overlap. Okay, so the brain, as we get older, it starts wasting away. We start shrinking. The volume shrinks, and we don't exactly know why. And so, there's lots of different changes in our cognitive health at different points in our life. As you see here, some things peak at like 46, right? Let's say, right over in here we have the verbal ability gets its best at what, 53, 46 to 53. But for the most part, most of our things start going downhill. And there's a lot of reasons for it, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But here it is again, at age 40 to 50, 2% decrease in overall brain weight every decade. But the interesting thing is it's not just a...
How old am I? I'm 90 years old.
Give me a second here, hold on.
What was life like when you were a little girl?
I have a video that decided to start playing in the background on its own. Isn't that interesting? Computers are great, right?
I forgot so much.
I don't know why it's... Okay, all right, so let me go back. You're going to see this video, and it's absolutely amazing. I can't wait to show it to you. All right, but now we're going to go back to the slideshow. Okay, so the decrease in the weight of the brain and the volume of the brain is not evenly distributed. It actually affects our limbic system more than the other areas. So what does that mean? It basically means it's our parts of our brain that are related to memory that decrease in weight and volume more than the rest of the part of the brain, right? So that scientists believe and neuroscientists believe contributes to a lot of the cognitive decline that we see as we age. Okay, so, and here's some more just facts and figures just to get us, we all know a lot of that Alzheimer's disease is increasing. This is an interesting fact. See here, I saw that COVID, was it the other slide? Yeah, right here. This was interesting. COVID-19 contributed to a 17% increase in Alzheimer's and dementia death. That's a little scary. So I don't know about you, but I think I've had COVID twice. So we all have, many of us have had it, and it's going to affect our brains if we are not careful and take some preventative measures to counterbalance some of these environmental things that we are all exposed to. Here's some other things. These are associations. So this was a huge study, and the study was called Summary of the Evidence on Modifiable Risk Factors for Cognitive Decline in Dementia, a Population-Based Perspective. That's a long title for the study. I have a link at the bottom, so when I send it, you'll see the link. It's not visible here, but if you want to read the study, you can. But this summarizes a huge study with an enormous population, and basically it's showing the association. So what increases your risk of dementia? And the bigger arrows, the strong evidence, are the big ones. So these are the biggest things, these 5, that have been associated with dementia and cognitive decline. And then what are the things that decrease your risk? Well, the biggest one is years of formal education. That they're not saying that causes or prevents it, they're saying it's associated, right? And that's an interesting one, because to me that shows that using your mind as much as possible in new ways probably is a contributing huge factor. Also, physical activity, diet, and cognitive training. But we're going to talk about a lot of other interesting things that probably, hopefully, it'll be new to you. Okay, so I have distilled the whole, all the causes of dementia really in cognitive, and the things that contribute to declining cognitive health, to 2 main categories, which I've underlined up here. First, inflammation, which I also, in that category, I lump in oxidative damage, and then declining and changing blood circulation in the brain. Those are the 2 things that reduce our cognitive health as we age. Now, many things contribute to each of these. So this what causes inflammation and oxidative damage is all of this right here, okay? And we're gonna go into each of these in quite a bit of depth. Okay, so let's talk about circulation first. So this is an interesting image, which what you're really learning here is that from A to F, you're seeing different views of how the blood stops circulating in those areas. And that doesn't mean a whole lot. It's an interesting fact, but what you're seeing is specific areas of the brain, will start losing blood flow more than others. So it's not just that you're losing circulation, you're using circulation in specific areas of the brain. And they've shown that in population-based studies. So it's sort of interesting. So what can we do to increase our circulation? So now we're getting into a little bit of the nitty-gritty of like, what can you do? And I'm going to tell you a little anecdote. When I was doing a preceptorship with a doctor in Oregon, I was sitting in the office with a wife of an elderly man, and so the doctor said, why didn't you ask her questions? And so I did. I started asking questions. Well, why are you here? Why is your husband here? And he was there to get intravenous EDTA chelation. And so I'm like, why are you here for that? Like, what made you want to do this? Well, apparently her husband had dementia, and she said to me, and I'm quoting her, and I'll never forget this, it really made an impression on me. I lost him. I lost my husband. He was gone mentally. Like his dementia was so bad he didn't even know who I was. So I came here. We did a bunch of tests, with the doctor who I was precepting with, and we learned that his blood circulation wasn't well. So if it's not well in the rest of his body, it's probably his brain's not getting a lot of enough blood to function properly. So they decided to do chelation therapy. And within 2 sessions of chelation, so he only went back twice, he's completely back. She said, my husband came back, and then she started sobbing when she told me the story. So two sessions of 20 minutes of EDTA, and her husband came back, right? And to me, I'll never forget it. And so then I started talking to some other people, who came in, and they had similar stories, right? So it was not just one, it was multiple stories, but I still remember this one moment because she started sobbing. She's like, I couldn't believe it. He's been back ever since. And so now he does regular, her husband comes for regular EDTA. And so what is EDTA? It's a long name that I think I have on another slide here somewhere. Oh, here it is. Calcium disodium ethylene, and so you can read that because I can't pronounce it. So it doesn't really matter what it means. It's a chemical that they use that chelates, and chelates means it binds to things, and it has a preference for calcium. It really likes calcium, so it will stick to the calcium, the theory is, in your arterial walls, and it will basically clean out the calcium and the plaque that's clogging your arteries and preventing blood flow in your brain. And so it doesn't do this for everyone all the time. It's not a 100% track record, and if you read about it online, you're going to see there's a lot of pros and cons to EDTA. And so I would caution you to really investigate this closely with your doctor if you want to consider doing it. It also binds to heavy metals, and so what happens is, let's say you were someone who made hats or something, when you had a lot of poison that you were exposed to in your career, in your lifetime, and now you're an elder person and you want to do EDTA, it will mobilize those toxins right away. It will pull the toxins out of your adipose tissue and mobilize them, and then they're floating around in your bloodstream, and you need to be able to excrete them fast enough. And if you don't, then it's going to find other fatty tissue to try to live in, right? So let's say you had it in your visceral fat was all your toxins, because our toxins like to hang out in our fat. So now you've taken EDTA, all those toxins are out of your fat and in your bloodstream. The next place they like to go is the fat in your brain, because your brain is mostly fat. And so it can worsen dementia if you do EDTA wrong, right? So I will caution you, you need to go to a specialist. If you're gonna even consider this, you need to go to someone who's been doing it for decades, who knows what they're doing, who does it very slowly and not too fast, and those kinds of things. But I thought it was worth mentioning because I saw myself with my own experience how amazing people have come back to life after doing EDTA. But there's pros and cons, so I'll say that. Okay, so here's a study that talks about chelation therapy in the treatment of neurodegenerative diseases. And what is interesting is, I took some quotes from the study. The presence of toxic metals are always significantly more elevated in neurodegenerative disease patients, and so compared to healthy controls. And the EDTA removes toxic metal burdens and improves patient symptoms. So those are the two things EDTA does, is it removes toxins, which contributes to dementia, and it also helps open up your arteries and clean them out. So that's great. Okay, so now we're going to go about, so how does blood flow, how does aging, affect blood flow to the brain? So this is another sort of interesting study. Sorry. What it's showing is that different parts of your brain, the gray matter versus the white matter versus other types of parts of your brain, are affected differently with aging but all three types of brain tissue go down and in terms of blood flow in your brain as you get older. Okay, so what are some other things that affect our brains and our brain health? And one of them is cortisol. So chronic stress our whole lives, because all of us are exposed to tons of stress in our lives, and many of us have chronically elevated cortisol levels. And cortisol is a hormone that causes oxidative damage. So you don't want chronically elevated cortisol. This is something that if you want to keep your brain healthy, you need to figure out how to decrease your cortisol level. And in some of the studies I was looking at, the consequences of high cortisol on the brain is specifically the areas of the brain that are in charge of memory and memory formation. So we got to figure out how to decrease our cortisol, which I'm going to go into. Okay, so here's another study that shows how circulating cortisol affects different brain structures. It's just another saying the same thing as I've been saying before, so I'm going to keep going. Here's the brain and the different areas that study talked about. I'm going to go through a lot of the slides fast, but you can go back to them and click on the links if you're interested and read them. So a lot of this is just a high-level information so we can get to some of the more interesting things. Okay, so a lot of people call Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes. How many of you have heard that term? Yeah. So what do they mean by that? Because that's not an official term. It's sort of just a term that we've tried to create to get the idea across that Alzheimer's is caused or is associated with chronically high blood sugar in your brain specifically. And so what happens is, it's the high blood sugar and the low blood sugar, the highs and the lows that we have found affect your brain health. So what happens is you may have a really good A1C, so I don't know if you know what A1C is, but it's like your 3-month average of your blood glucose. But the thing is, if you're the green person or the red person, you have the same A1C because it's an average over 3 months, right? So you still might be in trouble. Like just because you have an A1C of 5.2, you might still be having high highs and low lows. And so it's really important to train your body to cut off the highs and to cut off the lows. You want to squeeze that. You want yours to look like that, okay? And there's ways to train your body to do that, to not have high responses to different foods and to not get super low either. Like for example, it's called fat adaptation, which I'm going to talk to you about in a few slides. And I'll go through it a little bit later, but right here, how many of you know what your fasting blood glucose is? If you've gotten, great, excellent. And so you can test this at home, and if you don't have a blood glucometer, I feel like every child should be issued a blood glucometer, just because it's so important to understand your blood sugar for your overall health for your whole life. And checking this in the morning is very informative. And so if you're over 100, first thing when you get up, now a lot of people will get up in the morning and then they'll go to the phlebotomist and then they get their blood work done, and it's an hour, could be an hour and a half after they've woken up, before they've had the blood removed for the test. And that's not an accurate number. If you want a really accurate number, you need to have your own blood glucometer at home. And when you roll out of bed, before you've even stood up, right, you're just sitting on the edge of your bed, half asleep, that's when you need to take your blood glucose measurement. Because what happens is, what helps us wake up and start our day is cortisol. So our cortisol naturally spikes early in the morning, and that spike increases your blood glucose. And so you could have a false high. Okay, so in other words, if you go to the phlebotomist and they take your blood an hour or even 40 minutes after you've awoken, that hot, whatever your number is on your labs could be too high. So to get an accurate number, get your own blood glucometer and test your blood glucose first thing upon rising. And then I would do this. I would get a log and figure out what it is after eating and 2 to 3 hours after eating. This will give you a very good feel for how high and how low your response is to your food. And then you'll know if you need to do something about it. Okay, so here's A1C once again. How many of you know your A1C? Excellent. Okay, well, it's something I recommend everyone do. Everyone should know what their A1C is. To me, that's a more powerful number in many ways than your fasting blood glucose because it's something that it's your blood glucose that's averaged over a 3-month period. And you're like, well, how can they get an average over 3 months? And it's because the average life of a red blood cell is 3 months. And so your red blood cells are all replaced every 3 months. And the sugar in your bloodstream sticks to those red blood cells. So we used to say to our patients at the clinic in Washington, basically your A1C is how frosted your flakes are. You know, your frosted flakes in your cereal bowl? How frosted are your flakes? Okay, that's what the A1C, and the flakes represent your red blood cells. So it's a 3-month average. The sugar doesn't stick to the red blood cells right away. It takes a while to accumulate, and it gives you a very accurate feel for how much sugar is in your blood from an average standpoint. So to me, that's an extremely important number, and more important than fasting blood glucose. Okay, so I'm going to go through these a little. There's many different neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease. There's just so many different ones, and we're going to talk about a couple of them here. Alzheimer's is just one of them, but they're all related and seem to be overlapping in a lot of ways. And blood sugar is related to all of them because it causes a mitochondrial dysfunction, which I'm going to go into a little bit more. If you have chronically high blood sugar, or even if you have high highs and low lows, but your A1C looks fine, right? So you really need both measurements. You need to know how you're responding to your food, which you have to check with a blood glucometer, and you need to know what your A1C is. You need to know both. You need to have all the information to see how you're doing. Otherwise, you might think you're doing fine, and you may not be. As an experiment with my classmates, because I was older than most of my classmates' parents, because I went to medical school late, they were saying, oh, Deb, there's these great bars in the bookstore, these power bars, because everyone's hungry in class. We have these 4-hour classes, right? So as soon as we have a break, everyone runs to the bookstore and buys some quick food, right? And there's like low-carb protein bars or whatever. I'm like, these are good. I'm like, no, you don't understand. They're not. And they're like, no, it says it right on the label. I'm like, okay, well, the only way you're going to know how your body responds to a low-carb, high-protein bar is if you prick your finger. So I said, I guarantee you my blood sugar will go through the roof, more than a candy bar. Okay? And so I proved it to them. So I went in, I said, okay. And so they're all sitting, we're in a big auditorium, and my friends are looking over my shoulder, and I pricked my finger because they didn't own a blood glucometer, but I did, because diabetes runs in my family, and so I've been interested in this for a while. So I pricked my finger, and my blood glucose, very hungry. I had not eaten at all. I had fasted all night long, and it was like, 9 a.m., and I hadn't had anything to eat. I said, okay, this is me hangry, right? This is my blood sugar when I'm really hungry. And I pricked it, and it was like 87. That's awesome, okay? Because that means even when I'm really hungry, my low doesn't go low, right? My low stays in that green. But how am I going to do after I eat, right? How do I do? So then I said, here's the bar, the low protein bar that should not raise my blood sugar, right? So I ate 1 bite of this bar. That was only about 3 bites worth. They make them so small, the big wrapper. So I had a third of the bar, but it was 1 bite, and I'm chewing it, and I waited like 2 minutes, and I checked my blood sugar. It was already at like 95. That's like 2 minutes. 5 minutes later, I was at 120, okay? Then 15 minutes later, I was like at 145, which is crazy. That's super high, right? And I'm like, okay, so all you little ones, you guys, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, okay, so don't believe the wrapper. Then the next day I came and I brought a piece of bread, and I did it with a piece of bread. That raises my blood glucose too. For me, bread makes it go just as high as a power bar, right? The third day, I brought a piece of chocolate, dark chocolate. Didn't do anything. I think I got to like maybe 98 with a dark chocolate bar, right? And I ate the whole thing, which I would never do, right? And it didn't raise blood sugar. So the point I'm making is you need to you need to really find out what your body does. And it's going to take some finger pricks. You got to prick your finger and see, okay, I just ate a big bowl of pasta. You may be someone who can eat a bowl of pasta and it doesn't go up high, but a piece of bread's going to, sourdough bread or whatever, you don't know how your body's going to react. Me, rice is fine. I can eat a bowl of rice and my blood sugar won't go up. But other people, if they eat a bowl of rice, their blood sugar goes way up. Potatoes, that'll make my blood sugar go way up, right? But not rice. So, you need to just start figuring out what works for you and what doesn't. So you can then know how to combine foods so you won't have a spike. Because if you eat a potato with butter, I can make my spike go down because I'm combining it with fat. Okay, so remember, the objective is to get the highs not so high and the lows not so low, so that way you can get, you can be regulated. And you have to learn what foods and what food combinations can do that. Okay, so Alzheimer's disease, high sugar diets are linked to increased deposition of beta amyloid fragments in your brain, suggesting that brain's insulin resistance may contribute to AD. So, Alzheimer's disease. So, insulin resistance, when you eat food and your blood sugar goes way up, okay? That's insulin resistance, because what happens is your insulin, insulin is what is secreted into your blood to remove the sugar from your blood, okay? So you're not being able to remove it fast enough, right? And so, so a long time ago, the doctors, the way they would know if you were diabetic is they would have you pee and see if ants would be attracted to your urine. Because what happens is if you can't take the blood, the sugar out of your bloodstream and put it into your tissues, then you're diabetic. You pee it out. You pee out all of the sugar, okay? So what gets the sugar? So diabetics, if you're severely diabetic, you'll start losing weight. And the reason why is you're eating all this food, but you can't get the nutrients into your tissue. It's in your blood, and then you pee it out, right? So you're just peeing out all the food you eat. And so insulin is the hormone that is secreted by your pancreas, so that way you can take hold of that sugar and pull it into your tissue. Now, if you have too much sugar in your blood, what are you going to do with that sugar? Well, it becomes adipose tissue, right? But you can also, if you walk right after you eat, let's say the instant you eat your last bite of food, literally, the last bite of food, you put your fork down. If you go on a walk, it has been shown in studies, your muscles in your legs act like a sponge, and they just soak up all that sugar right out of your bloodstream. It's one of the best things to do, is just walk for 10 to 15 minutes. I'm not talking power walk either. Just walk 10 to 15 minutes after you eat your meals. And it's one of the best things for your blood sugar. So what happens, so it says, okay, the synthesis of ketone bodies, and I'll talk about that in a while, leads to specific neurological benefits, including reducing inflammatory apoptotic mediators, improving mitochondrial function. So all of this is saying is, you need to train your body to burn fat and glucose as fuel, okay? And so most of us, we get hangry, and as soon as your body is like, I'm hungry, you immediately give it a carbohydrate, and you have to stop doing that. That's how you get your blood sugars regulated, is you train your body to burn fat and burn glucose both. And most of us are going to be very resistant to this, because our body's like, no, I'm just going to scream a little harder, and I know she'll give me that donut, right? And but you got to resist it. And eventually, it gets easier to flip that physiological switch over so you can burn fat. But it could take a while. My mom was diagnosed pre-diabetic, and now she's not. But it took a good year to 2 years for us to train her metabolism to not be so sensitive to food, right? So now she can eat foods that she couldn't eat before, but she still has to be careful. Does that make sense? But you have to train your body to burn fat. Okay, so what supports cognitive health? Well, there's a ton of things. These three are the ones I'm going to talk about, but I have so many more, and I'm going too slow already, I can tell. But they've proven in studies that physical activity combined with a mental activity, a skill, actually is the most beneficial. So it sounds ridiculous, but let's say you're learning a new language, you're learning Spanish or something while you're going on a walk. Believe it or not, somehow combining a physical activity with a skill that you're learning that's new helps your brain stay. It's better than just doing a crossword puzzle, because you've done a crossword puzzle all the time. They're finding that if you've done crossword puzzles for 20 years, they're not as helpful, right? You need to actually be doing something that you don't know how to do, right? Like learning to play the piano. or learning to play a new instrument, right? It has to be something that's hard to learn because you don't know how to do it. And so we all should be, like, maybe you've never watercolored, do some watercolor painting, you know, and don't worry about feeling like a fool. It's the process of doing a new skill. Now, watercolor, it's hard to be doing jumping jacks at the same time, so I don't know how you do that. But, you know, the idea is, if you can combine a physical activity with, you know, like riding a unicycle would be perfect, right? Because that's something new, although when we're older, we could get hurt. So you gotta be careful, use your, you know, judgment. Okay, so then we have brain stimulation. These ones I'm excited to talk about today, music and light therapy, and then decreasing inflammation. So we're gonna talk about all of these. Okay, so our brain has evolved, and I mentioned this already, to be in feast or famine. And we really have evolved that way because we didn't always have food all the time. So you might have a big, you find the honey, you eat all the honey, that's a whole bunch of glucose, and then the next, you know, 2 weeks, all you have is meat, right? So we had to be, our bodies had to learn how to be physiologically flexible and use whatever we had as fuel. Like whatever was available had to be used as fuel. And we haven't, as a species, really had carbohydrates plentiful in our diets as we do now. Nowadays, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we eat carbohydrates. And we have to be careful with that. So, okay, so our brain is one of the few tissues, one of the few organ systems in our body that can actually use 2 different fuels. We can run on glucose and we can run on ketones or ketone bodies. And that's a little bit unusual. Our liver can too, but our brain is interesting in that it can use this whole separate fuel. So you can fast for 20 days, right? And you're not gonna die if you have water. You can fast properly, you will start burning ketones for fuel, and the ketones will come from your adipose tissue. And most of us have, if you have even 9% body fat, which is very low, like a triathlete, you will have enough to be able to fast for 20 days. Because we have the calories that come from our adipose tissue is 7 times what comes from a glucose molecule. So it's 7 times more energy. So we got a lot, even a little bit of fat here is enough to last you a long time, but you have to train your body to access it, right? And if you only eat carbohydrates every single meal and every single day, it's like the switch has been corroded in one direction and it doesn't want to flip over to burning fat, right? So, okay, so the ketone bodies, these are the 3 ketone bodies right here. So these fancy names right here. And it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, like for you to know what those names are, but it's an alternative energy source. And it's actually, the brain, everyone says the brain prefers glucose, but it's not true. The brain actually prefers ketones, it prefers fat. It's just, it takes a while to, it's much more efficient, the brain is more efficient using ketones. And people who have Alzheimer's disease, if you can get them on a ketogenic diet, a safe one, they will come back to you. It's totally crazy because the brain starts using a different fuel, not glucose, and for some reason that different fuel, what we don't completely understand, and I have a video to show you that talks about a doctor who started treating her husband who had early onset Alzheimer's, and the video is just astonishing. So these are the ketone bodies right here, and it's interesting that immediately after a child is born, the newborn prefers ketone bodies instead of glucose, which means mother's milk has almost all fat, and it's fat and ketone bodies to provide for the infant until they are ready to start using the glucose. And then, so it's much more energy efficient than glucose right here, and this is the most abundant one. And it's hard to get into ketosis, like a nutritional ketosis. I've done it several times to try to experiment on myself, and it works. I will say that the biggest thing, and I don't like not eating. I'm not a big proponent of fasting. I could barely do 3 days, and I'm like, I'm gonna die. I felt like I'm so hungry, right? But I did lose a lot of weight doing my fasting. But there's one thing, the fast that I did the longest was like 3.5 days, and I checked my ketones in my blood and in my breath and in my urine. I was checking it 3 ways because I was an engineer at the time, and I graphed it all out. And the thing that I felt, like, how did I feel when I was in ketosis? I felt like my brain was on fire. Like, I'm an engineer, and so I'm a 20 plus mechanical design engineer, and I had I couldn't write my ideas down fast enough of things I wanted to invent. You know, like my brain felt like it was a superpower. So I do know from personal experience that when my brain runs on ketones, I feel like I'm a genius. Now, other people may think that that's not true, but like for what it felt like to me, like I started making mental connections on how to design things and solving problems that I was stuck on before. So I was like, okay, when I go to medical school, I'm going to go into ketosis before my board exams, and I never did it because I hate fasting. But so I didn't have the willpower to do it. But it does, from personal experience, affect your brain tremendously. Okay, so what happens is, where do you get ketones? Well, you get it from onboard adipose tissue, but you can also get it from exogenous. That means food that you eat, fat that you eat. And there are some foods that will encourage your body, almost push you into ketosis, which is interesting. So you can cheat a little bit, and it's by giving your body fats to eat when you're fasting. So every morning you have fasted all night long. You have not eaten anything all night long. That's why we call our first meal breakfast, because we're breaking the fast of the night. And if you give your body fat to eat first thing, you will push yourself into ketosis, and it's very good for your brain, extremely healthy for your brain. Okay, so this is what happens. This is ketoacidosis. I don't know if people are like, oh, being in ketosis is a bad thing. There's a huge difference between ketoacidosis and nutritional ketosis, and so this is just a little summary. You can read the link on the bottom, a lot more about it, but ketoacidosis is when, remember I told you diabetics, they can't get the sugar out of their blood because the insulin they're resistant to the insulin. The insulin can't take the sugar out of the blood. So what happens is they start losing weight, and then their brain is screaming for fuel, and then what happens is they start burning ketones for fuel, and it gets out of control, and that causes diabetic ketoacidosis. And it's a little bit different than the nutritional ketosis. Okay, so fatty acids are the building blocks for ketones. This is how you get your ketones. And so one of the things you're going to see in some of the slides in the future here that I'm going to be getting to is medium chain triglycerides. That's the key to what you should be eating in the morning to support your brain health and to lose weight. Okay? And so what are medium chain triglycerides? In our diet, most of the triglycerides, or the fats that we eat, are long chain. So we want medium and short chain. Those are the ones that will affect your brain health and help you lose weight and stimulate you to enter nutritional ketosis. So this is chemistry. It's hard to describe. I don't want to go into this too much, except why is it called a medium chain triglyceride? A triglyceride just has a glycerol backbone and then 3 carbon chains. And so what makes it a medium chain is 5 to 12 carbons, right? And so a long chain would be 13 to 18, and short is like 1 to 5, right? So that's what a triglyceride is. It's just a fat, and it's the length of the carbon chains, and these are the carbon chains. And 3 of them are attached. If it's a triglycerol, that means there's 3 carbon chains, right? And so glycerol, that's just what, it's the backbone that it's attached to. So that's just a little chemistry lesson for you. So where do you get these, right? And so people ask a lot of questions, like, saturated and unsaturated. It gets very confusing. So I will say, if you're interested in some super informative videos, and I might actually show you a couple of them, but I will talk to you about this person right here. This is Dr. Mary Newport. She's written these 2 books right here, and then this gentleman here is an ND. Do you see that? ND. And he based his books on her story. So really, but he's more famous, which I think is interesting. But he bases a lot of what he talks about on her story. So I'd like to go to the horse's mouth, right? This is the really interesting section of her video. But basically, this woman, she noticed when her husband turned like 40, and he was a genius. He started having some mental decline. He started putting his one shoe on his foot, and the others would be barefoot, and he'd be walking around. It got worse and worse. He was in his 40s when this was happening, and his mental decline just started going down. He couldn't even go to the post office. And so she's a doctor, so she started looking into some, I'm summarizing here, what are some medical studies that he could, drug, because she's into drugs and everything, what are some, trials that he could do for some new drugs to help his brain, right? And she found this one trial and she got her hands on the paper that had this one element that within one taking of it orally, you would have amazing results, okay? And that's what that minute 450 to 555, if you want to fast forward. And basically, within one taking of this element, his brain, he came back to her. And it was medium chain triglycerides derived from coconut oil. That was the primary ingredient in the study. So she then she tried to get him in the study, and he failed. His MoCA score, which is this test they make you do at the doctor to try to gauge your cognitive health, he was so low, he didn't qualify for the study. He was at severe dementia, right? And so she's like, well, I have to give him this medium chain triglyceride. Where do I get it? And she researched and found that 2.5 tablespoons, which is a lot, of coconut oil will give you the equivalent of a therapeutic dose of medium chain triglycerides. So that's what she started doing, and he came back to her. And so these two books are about her story and how she figured out that the coconut oil low carb solution, getting him into nutritional ketosis first thing in the morning, would bring his brain back to, and it's just a fascinating story. Okay, so this also talks about it. I've had people ask me even recently about, well, isn't coconut oil bad for you? It's saturated fat. And this video right here is fantastic. And he talks about why coconut oil is okay, because 70% is medium chain triglycerides. That's why coconut oil is really good to use. So for example, in our family, because we're trying to work on our cognitive health, we make what I call fat bombs. Right? And we buy these little candy molds, the silicone candy molds that are flexible, and each of them are about 1.5 tablespoons worth of, whatever you put in them. And we mix coconut oil with cacao powder, so cocoa, right? And then some of those sweeteners that are on those tables, and we blend it up and then pour it in there, and we make a little chocolate truffle, and then we eat that with our coffee in the morning. And that's the way we get our morning, coconut oil in our diet. Isn't that right? And Mom's like, yes, and I have to make them, and we go through them very fast, right? Anyway, so, okay, that's a really good video to watch, though. Another way to get some medium chain triglycerides is this. So if you've heard of MCT oil, that's what it is. It's coconut oil, but they derived and they just distilled just the medium chain triglycerides out of the coconut oil. And you can turn it into a powder, and there's different ways of turning it into a powder. This is the one I use. There are ones that have the dehydrating method might be a little bit more healthy, but this is the one I've used for years. You can get it in a 2-pound container, and the powder I find causes me less digestive distress, because eating fat like coconut oil on an empty stomach in the morning can cause people digestive icky feeling. It did for me. Apparently that goes away with time. I have never been disciplined enough to figure that out, so I usually just use this. And I put a big scoop in my coffee in the morning, and it tastes like cream, and it's delicious. It dissolves really well, and it's delicious. It has no taste. It does not taste like coconut. This one doesn't. I have had some MCT oil powders that do taste like coconut, and I don't like that in my coffee. I just want it to taste creamy. Okay, so some other things you can do to train your body to be metabolically flexible, so it will start burning fat sooner, is you need to do intermittent fasting and carb cycling. And so these are two really good books that talk about both of them. Intermittent fasting, you can do daily intermittent fasting, and that's where you don't eat. You keep your feeding window to 6 to 7 hours. So let's say you have your first meal at 11 a.m., right? Then your last meal would be 5 p.m., and then you don't eat anything till 11 a.m. the next morning, right? That would be keeping your feeding window to 6 hours, right? And if you can restrict your feeding window to a small, and so some people start with an 8-hour. They give themselves an 8-hour window, right? So you can have breakfast at 10, and you can still have dinner at 6 or something, but then don't eat anything the rest of the hours, right? And that would be daily intermittent fasting. And I've been doing that for years. And, it works really well to help you lean up, so it will help you lose weight, but it also trains your body to start burning fat and keeps that blood glucose and blood sugar level a lot more equalized. And then carb cycling, it's not like you can't eat carbs. But you need to give your body a break from carbs so it will learn how to burn fat for your fuel for your brain. So if every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're always giving your body carbs, then it never learns how to burn fat. And I have some graphs to show that. That's called being fat adapted. Fat adapted means it's easy for your body to start burning fat for fuel, okay? And if you combine these two methods, it works really well. So this carb cycling is where you go low carb, I'm not saying no, just low carb for 2 or 3 or 4 days, and then on the 4th or 5th day, you eat carbs. A lot, like you make that the major part of your diet for like the 5th day. And then you do it again. You have 2 or 3 days where you're low carb, and then the 5th day or 4th day, you do a high carb. And that forces your body to not feel like it's in starvation mode. Does that make sense? And so it knows that, it doesn't know if it's going to have carbs or not, and it learns how to just be flexible and go back and forth. Okay, so here's the science of fat adaptation. And so these are all graphs that are hard to understand, so I'm going to try to distill it down to the essence. But this would be me, and this would be someone who has not become fat adapted. So this is a low carb diet. That's what I try to do. And this is a high carb diet, okay? And if you look, after 180 minutes of exercise, this is the percentage of what that person is using as fuel to fuel their activity, right? So let's say if you have 2 people on a treadmill and they're both running equally hard and they have a VO2 max thing on they're measuring everything the person is exhaling, and you can tell by the exhale of the breath what fuel the person is burning. If they're burning fat or if they're burning glucose, you can tell by what's in their exhale, okay? So they get them on a treadmill and they get them running, and they get a lot of marathon runners in the past used to tape on their arm goo. Have you heard of that, goo? It's basically like these flavored glucose. It's like eating Karo syrup, right? It has a raspberry flavor or chocolate flavor. And they would, every 20 minutes, or they would take one and squirt it in their mouth, because the prevailing theory back 10 or 20 years ago was that you had to keep fueling your body with glucose to make it through the marathon. Well, that would be a high carb diet, okay? And that person would not be fat adapted, because if they don't keep fueling their body, they'll do what's called bonking. And when you bonk, you can't finish the race because you don't have the energy. Like, you'll just fall over, right? Because you're not fat adapted. Your body doesn't know how to flip over and start burning fat for fuel. Okay, so a person like me over here, I start burning fat right away, the whole time, right? So it seems not fair. We're doing equal effort, but I'll be burning fat and this person won't be burning fat. Right? And it's because I trained my body to burn fat. And so I was training for a Race Across America a while back, about 8 years ago or so, 7 or 8, man, time flies. And I was training with this other person who's an Ironman triathlon. She's really good, really strong, really buff, man. She could do an Ironman triathlon. But she was this person right here. And she's like, well, you got to get energy drinks. We're going to go on a 60-mile ride, and you're going to have to make sure you've got enough food and everything. I'm like, I'm not bringing anything. I'm just going to bring 2 bottles of water. Right? For a 60-mile ride. I'm just going to put 2 water bottles on and they're like, you got to put energy powder in it. I'm like, no, I don't like energy powder. And she's like, you're not going to make it. And I looked at her, I said, well, let's see if I make it or not. I'll bring such. She's like, you got to bring something just in case. I'm like, okay. I said, I've never bonked in my life. I don't bonk, right? I'm not a bonker, right? So I did the full 60-mile ride on water, and I wasn't even hungry. It's just because I trained my body through a lifetime of fasting to learn how to burn fat, and I don't get hungry. So you can do it, but it's hard at first. And so that's what this is showing is, fat oxidation, low carbohydrate diet versus a high carbohydrate. They're burning more fat, that low carbohydrate diet, right? And it's not fair. It's just not fair. But it's true. Okay, so now we're going to talk about sleep. Sleep is one of the most important things for cognitive health. Absolutely one of the most important things. And so I'm going to spend a lot of time on it, but I'm going to flip through the slides quick because I have a whole nother lecture on it that you can go watch on YouTube. So if you find anything I'm saying interesting about sleep, go watch this hour-and-a-half other lecture. But I did repeat a lot of slides here. Our sleep, we sleep in stages, okay? And we repeat these stages all night long, okay? And what happens is our brain waves go through different levels and we repeat it. Now, and so some studies will call it N1, N2, N3, and REM, right? And that's the stages of sleep, and then you repeat, okay? And the stages that we care about for cognitive health, okay, is this one right here, N3, or it's called slow wave sleep. And you know, as scientists and medical doctors, we like to have 18 words that mean the same thing. So another word for it would be gamma wave, another word would be delta wave, another word would be deep sleep. All of that is saying the same thing. So when you read in a study, you'll see them call it deep sleep, stage 4 sleep, you know, you'll call it delta wave sleep. They're all saying the same thing, okay? That's this bottom area right here, okay? And for cognitive health, you want to maximize the amount of time you're in deep sleep because it acts like a pressure washer for the brain, and they've proven in studies that delta wave sleep cleans out all the amyloid plaques, okay, in your brain. Now, so you're like, okay, but if you notice, it's not the same. Every cycle is not exactly the same. The beginning of the night, your first 1 to 2 to 3 cycles is when you get your delta wave sleep, right? Okay, so here's another picture of the same thing. So you've got deep sleep, deep sleep, deep sleep. But do you notice it's longer, and then it's shorter, and then it's shorter, and then it's non-existent, right? So what you're seeing is that you get your deep sleep early in the night. That's when you get it. It's early, okay? And it's based on circadian rhythms, which is based on light that hits your eyes. Which means, okay, I go to bed, let's say 1 a.m. I'm going to stay up late and go to bed at 1 a.m. You're going to miss all of this. It doesn't matter if you still sleep till 10 a.m., right? Because it's not about the length of time, it's about the light that hits your eyeballs, okay? So you need, so you really, really need, if you, as an older person especially, we need to go to bed early. And it's funny because older people that I know say, oh, I got to go to bed late, right? You're robbing yourself of the deep sleep that cleans your brain. Okay, so I'm going to prove it. So here's, once again, slow wave sleep, deep sleep, gamma wave sleep, restorative sleep, we're saying the same thing. It's this right here, the slow wave, deep restorative sleep that will clean the amyloid plaques out of your brain. Now, this is a very complicated slide here, but I want to talk about it a little. And deep sleep is associated with dreamless sleep, and it's the increase in cerebrospinal fluid that cleans the amyloid plaque from the brain. Now here, the REM sleep is also important because that's where memory consolidation happens. So memory consolidation is like, so deep sleep, the way I like to describe it to people is, when I was in medical school, I learned all this new information. It's like drinking out of a fire hose every day. You learn all this new information. That's in your short-term memory. Now you got to get it out of your hippocampus, short-term memory, and you got to get it into your long-term memory. Deep sleep does that. Deep sleep is the transfer of your short-term memory to your long-term memory. And it has sleep spindles. See this right here, this little sleep spindle? So if you had a brainwave sensor on me, it would be this drone. You could sense that I'm in deep sleep, and then it'd go beep, beep, like that. That's what you would sense on if you were measuring my brain waves. And the scientists have learned that little spindle is like sending it from the hippocampus into your long-term memory. Okay? So you will not, so I could learn every single day all this great information, but if I miss my deep sleep because I'm staying up till 1 a.m. studying, it's never going into my long-term memory, which means 3 weeks later when I take the final exam, I can't remember any of it. Right? But I remembered that I learned it, but then I keep forgetting it. I can't get it to stick, right? And that will happen if you don't have deep sleep. You have to have deep sleep in order to transfer your short-term memory into your long-term. Now, how do you retrieve it? Okay, so now I got this information, and I want to be able to retrieve it, right? Well, that's where memory consolidation happens. And the way you retrieve your memory is, so let's say you learn that apples are red, and apples are a fruit, and apples have pectin, right? And an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Those are all different discrete pieces of information, and you filed them together. It's like you have apple, and you have keeps the doctor away, has pectin, is red, is round, right? So then we take it and we find all the storage cabinets and we say, we're going to put it in the round cabinet, we're going to put it in the fruit cabinet, we're going to put it in fructose, and so now that's how you access it. That's memory consolidation. We figure out where to put the information we learn. What have we already learned in our life that is related to what we learned, and that's REM sleep. So if you want to be able to retrieve your memories, you need to have REM sleep, and REM sleep happens more at the end of the night. right? That's where dreaming happens. That's memory consolidation. Okay, so strengthening neocortical memory representations. That's like the apple, the round, the fruit, how we relate the information. Okay, so now what happens is it's harder as we age to go into deep sleep and to get good quality deep sleep because of how our brains age. Our melatonin goes down. Melatonin is what helps us go into deep sleep. And so, like, this is a problem. Our human growth hormone also, decreases as we age. So, like, this is what happens to us as we age. It's so sad, right? We spend more time awake, we have less REM sleep, and we have less deep sleep as we age. And so that's why our memory, we have harder time retrieving memories because we don't have memory consolidation and we don't have good memory transfer from short-term to long-term. Okay, so here's a sleep comparison of young people versus elderly, right? And look at it, the pattern looks totally ridiculous. This is a nice pattern. It goes into deep sleep again, then less deep sleep, more REM, more REM. This is a normal, healthy pattern like I showed you at the beginning, right? That's a young person. This is us right now, okay? I'm 50. So I've hit this, and you're going to get to see it because I've measured mine, okay? So this is here we go, younger person, you have deep sleep, and then less, and then here you are older, you don't even get into deep sleep. Some of us, right? That's why the amyloid plaques start building up and we start having problems. Okay, so this is me. This is my sleep. I've measured it, right? So but if you look, you can't see it very well, but if you look, that's my deep sleep. That's my deep sleep. That's my deep sleep. This one was weird. I got a few little snippets over here. But if you look, most of my deep sleep happens early in my sleep, right? But it looks very sporadic because I'm a horrible sleeper, which is why I track it. So if you look, this is a ring right here. It's called the Oura ring, and I have it on my finger right here, and I've worn it for 8 or 9 years. And I've been tracking my sleep for 8 or 9 years because I'm an insomniac. And I'm trying to figure out, what's going to help me sleep. Like, is it 2 glasses of wine, or is it wine after 6 p.m., or is it, I'm exercising too late in the day, or is it because I ate meat or ate fat, or, I'm trying to figure it out, right? Because we're all different. And I have found the things that help me sleep at night. I know what to do to help me go into deep sleep. So if you look here, this is a typical pattern for me. Going to bed later than I should, because I know 9:30 is my sweet spot. That's when I get the most deep sleep for me, is 9:30, which is very early to me, right? But it works if I can do it. And all my deep sleep happens in this early part, and then I don't get any, right? So that's me. And if you look, I have 1 hour and 4 minutes of deep sleep. As an older person, 50 or older, you absolutely need a minimum of 1 hour. Most of my classmates had 2.5 hours of deep sleep a night. And I was getting 1. Barely made it through medical school. It was really hard for me to transfer the short-term memory to long-term memory, right? So 1 hour is the minimum that you should be shooting for. And then, light sleep, I got tons of it. I'm awake, tossing and turning at least 1 hour and 20 minutes. And then REM sleep, 1 hour and 51, that's pretty good, So tracking your sleep is really important if cognitive health is something that you want to make a priority in your life. But you also can take my tips that I've learned, which is go to bed early. Go to bed early. Force yourself. Figure out how to go to bed early. You got to figure it out. That will help your brain health more than almost anything besides blood sugar regulation. Okay? Pressure. The brain may clean out Alzheimer's plaques during sleep, right? And it's all deep sleep. It's the delta wave sleep that cleans your brain. Okay, and these are studies, and so this is a link I included that explains how. Some people are like, well, how? And it explains exactly what's going on in the brain during deep sleep that causes the cleaning to happen, okay? And so I'm not going to go into it a whole bunch. This also talks about sleep pressure right here, like what makes us feel sleepy. And it's an adenosine buildup, and it has to do with number of hours you're awake and all kinds of things. But one way to reset it, if you're like sometimes I'll be up till 3 in the morning, I just can't go to sleep. Some people say, sleep specialists say, you should reset yourself and force yourself to stay awake all night. If you're up till 3, stay awake. Stay awake. Do not go back to, don't try to sleep. And then your adenosine will keep building up. So then by the time 9 or 10 p.m. comes, you're going to barely be able to keep your eyes open. You'll go to bed early at 10 p.m. and then that resets your whole sleep cycle and it'll break your insomnia. I've had to do that a few times. Also, pay attention to your caffeine consumption, because the half-life is 5 hours, and if you have your first cup at 8 and your second cup at 10 and your next at noon, you're going to have caffeine in your system. It's going to be till 3 a.m. before your body has less than 100 milligrams, which is going to let you sleep, right? So be careful with your caffeine consumption. It may be affecting you more than you realize, right? Okay, so human longevity is associated with regular sleep patterns, and I'm already gone too far, so I'm going to try to just go really quick because we're already at our hour. But this shows right here the impact of glycine. So I have glycine on the table over here in a tub, and it will help you go into delta wave sleep sooner, and it helps you stay there longer. Okay, so so glycine is something I think everyone who is 45 years and older should be taking at night to help them get into the delta wave sleep sooner, stay there longer. It'll help your cognition. It also helps you build lean muscle mass because it's an amino acid. And for men, it helps reduce urinary frequency at night. It's one of the few things that helps reduce urinary frequency at night, which also helps your sleep because you're not getting up and down all night to go pee all the time, right? So 3 huge reasons, at least for men, and for women, we want lean muscle mass too because it's hard to keep it as we get older. So sleep, glycine, where does it come from? Well, it comes from Tub. You can buy it from Nutricost. It's just an amino acid. It's in a lot of bodybuilder formulas because it's a protein. What is glycine? It's in steak is what it is. It's an amino acid in steak. But the highest food form is pork rinds. So if you like pork rinds, go on ahead and eat them. You would only need a small handful of them to have a therapeutic dose. And if you want to snack on those before bed, that's fine with me. It's not going to raise your blood sugar, so I'm okay with that. And they're crunchy, so if you like them, just get a good quality. This is a really good quality right here, this brand Epic. Okay, so a good habit to get into is put some glycine in some chamomile tea or whatever tea you drink before you go to bed, and it'll help you. It's a good thing to go into. Another thing is microbiome. Your gut health is related to your brain health. So a diverse microbiome is very important. Fermented foods. So I'm just going to go through these. There are so many fermented foods. Figure out a fermented food that you like and eat it, okay? Because it will help you create a diverse microbiome, which will help your cognitive health. And this is one of my favorite misos. I've got 3 of them on the table over there. It's absolutely delicious. And you can just put it in water. It's like a savory drink that I just think is delicious. Here's some more. So tons of fermented foods. Start exploring. Figure out something you like. Inflammation. You got to lower your inflammation. Here's different ways to lower your inflammation or things that cause inflammation. Here's some ways to reduce your inflammation. I have all these sugars on the table here. These are sugar substitutes. So look into and experiment with things that are sweet that you like, so you don't feel like you have to eat sugar all the time. Ribose will rebuild damaged cardiac muscle. Really good for your heart. I absolutely love. So ribose and glycine are the best. Those are the 2 that I love. But I also eat this one. It doesn't have a lot of health benefits, but it doesn't raise my blood sugar. Okay, so I have some drink alternatives. I really believe in this one. I have 3 of them on the table for you to try. It's a herbal tincture that tastes like cola, and you won't believe me. How many of you tried it? So what do you guys think? Does it taste like, it's amazing. It's that it's herbs and there's no sugar in it. So if you like Coke or if you like root beer, there are alternatives that you can use. You mix it with carbonated water. It's absolutely amazing. And astragalus, these are all super medicinal and cancer fighting, and they're all just, it's amazing. I was going to make my own, but why? When I found this, I'm like, it's not worth it. I'll buy these. So I have 7 different flavors that Jing sells. I have all their flavors. I only brought 3, but they're all good, although my mom does not like the green one. That's the ginger lime or something. Okay, so these are some supplements that I included here. You guys can read about them because I'm going to send anybody who wants this presentation, I will email it to you because there's too much for me to go through right now. I do not believe you can supplement your brain away from Alzheimer's. It's blood sugar regulation, and it's sleep, and it's exercise. Those are like the ways to keep your brain healthy. But these supplements have been shown to do amazing things. okay? And low-dose lithium is a little bit awesome, actually. I tried it myself because it just is so good for your brain, and I have a whole book on it over there. Something to look into. Glynac is a supplement, which is just glycine plus N-acetylcysteine, so I have both of those over there. And so glycine we already talked about, super good for brain health. You can read the study all about it. It reverses cognitive decline. That's amazing. So once again, yet another good thing about glycine, right? And then here it is, Glynac, which is glycine and N-acetylcysteine, does all these things, and you can read the study. Phosphatidylcholine is a type of lipid that keeps your cell membranes functioning, which they find is damaged in people who have Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. So phosphatidylcholine is something you could look into taking. I know that I took it every single day while I was in medical school because I read about how good it is to help cognitive functioning, and I needed all the help I could get through medical school. So I have that one right here, and did it work? I don't know, but I did take it, and there's, phosphatidylcholine is a major source of neurotransmitter, and you can read all about it here. It says that it improves memory in mice with dementia. I was hoping it would improve memory in people going to medical school in their 40s, and I think it did, maybe. But acetyl L-carnitine is another one. There's lots of studies about it, but I'm going to reiterate, I'm not a big proponent of supplementing your way to not having Alzheimer's. But this one's interesting and worth looking into. And so I have this book right here, over there. You can flip through it. It's absolutely astonishing what we're starting to see. Now, it hasn't been enough like double-blind randomized super giant population studies yet, but it's very exciting and safe. Low-dose lithium is around here. The ones that we were using in the studies is just 5 milligrams. So 5 milligrams is like nothing. It's very, very low. We're talking like right around in here, low-dose supplementation, which is way far away from what people use for like bipolar disorder. This is like what's in some people's water supplies in this country, like in Ashland, Oregon. They have lithium hot springs, and their water supply has lithium in it. And they found that it lowers suicide ideation, and it helps with depression and anxiety. And that's why I was taking it in medical school, because I was very stressed out because my house burned down and I got beat up and all kinds of stuff. I had a lot of horrible things happen to me, and I was still trying to get through school. And so I took lithium, and I'm convinced that it helped regulate my mood considerably. But it's also been shown to be an Alzheimer's miracle. So worth looking into. You can read about it right here. But my recommendation would be 5 milligrams of lithium orotate. There's citrate, there's aspartate, there's all these different ones, but orotate's the one that is the safest. And I have 3 of them over here that you can look at and I can talk to you about. And so here's some studies that talks about it. Now, botanical medicine, here I am a naturopath, and I didn't even talk about all the herbs, but this is an excerpt taken from this book right here, which let's see, I haven't even got to music therapy. You're going to have to read this on your own, because I've been going too far. This is an absolutely spectacular, will give you chill bumps watching this documentary. And this is the link to it, and it shows that music, if you listen to music of when you were in your youth, it literally starts making your neurons fire again that have turned off, and it will bring people back to life who have dementia. And it's a spectacular documentary that is just amazing. So, and there's lots of different videos on it, on the effect of music therapy, on cognitive functioning. We ran out of time. Oh, and I have one other thing. This is flashing light. I was going to show it to you, so I'm going to do a demo right now. So, remember I told you that delta wave sleep clears the amyloid plaques in your brain? Well, light flashing at that same frequency, did I get it going yet?
Yes.
Hold on, let me try it again. Tell me if it's going.
No, it was, and then it
Okay, let me
stopped.
try it again.
It stops.
Hold on. Still, okay, now, is it starting? Can you guys see that? You can get an app for free called Strobe, and there have been studies, and you can watch a whole TED Talk, that when a light flashing at 40 hertz promotes gamma wave brain activity. And we all know that gamma wave, because you listened to me, is the same as delta wave, which is the same as slow wave sleep, which is what we want for deep restorative sleep, because it cleans the amyloid plaques out of our brain. Well, looking at a light in your eyes will promote the same thing for even just a couple minutes before bed. it will promote gamma activity and clear the amyloid plaques of your brain. So this right here is the woman who did the research, and this is a TED Talk, and go to minute 4 and minute 6:27, and you can hear her talk about the studies and what they found doing the research, and it's really, really amazing studies. So, like I said, I always run out of time, but I highly recommend you click on some of these links. They're amazing. This explains why the 40 hertz works, but it's the same reason why delta wave sleep works, because that's gamma waves, right? So you can buy a lamp for $150, or you can use a free app on your phone, right? So it's up to you. You can buy this light kit, which has these little lights, or if you want to spend some money, or you can just use a free app. And there's three free apps that I have that I can show you if you're interested, that I have played around with, and they're all free, and you can use them, and it works great. This one, it has all kinds of stuff, but it is free. That's the one I just used, was this one right here, and I just clicked on this button, and you can you can choose what you want, like how long you want it to go, how long you want it to repeat, all those kinds of things. Get rid of the mercury in your mouth, that's toxins. This is an interesting video, but what you're seeing is a tooth that was rubbed with a pencil eraser, and if you press play, which we ran out of time, you'd see that it's smoking, and that is mercury, and this is a 25-year-old tooth. So that means mercury fillings that you've had for 25 years, every time you brush your teeth, mercury vapor is being released into your body, into your lungs, and into your brain. Okay? You need to get rid of mercury fillings. Okay, so that's that, and you can read all about it, all the research. This is a great video talking about there's no safe level of mercury, and it's been linked to Alzheimer's disease. It's one of the most toxic substances we all have in our body, and so you can read all about all the studies that prove it. And then, so how do you detoxify? Let's say you have toxins and you've been exposed to toxins. These are all the ways to get rid of the toxins. These are the foods you eat that will chelate naturally. Instead of intravenous EDTA, you can do it with food, much more slowly and over time, with these foods right here, okay? And this clip was taken, and this is a zeolite, which also you can spray into your tongue and it will bind to heavy metals. Very safe. I consider this more safe for older people than intravenous EDTA because it's slower, but you can do it every day and it doesn't cost a lot of money, and you can do it at home. And I have it over there. You can spray it if you want, and it's under your tongue. It tastes like water, and it works really, really well to get heavy metals out of your body. And this explains why, what it is, and it's also antiviral, which is a nice bonus. And it doesn't taste like anything. So a lot of the clips that I showed in this presentation came from this book right here. If you are interested in anything I've said today, Dale Bresden, who's an MD, he created a naturopathic program and proved that he could reverse Alzheimer's in all of the people that was in his study, every single one, it was 100%. And so then he wrote these books, and they're absolutely fantastic. And so a lot of you'll see, I took screen captures of the book to put them in this presentation. It's just amazing, and it's everything. So he summarizes this in the book. He calls it the Recode Plan. So if you had to summarize his whole theory in the entire book of what will help your cognitive health, it's this right here, this, and this. That's it. Those 3 slides. That's like the summary of the whole book. And if you look at it, it's almost everything we talked about. KetoFlex is his version, his name for trying to go to train your body to burn ketones, right? And he explains how to do it with his target right here. Exercise, sleep, right? He talks about sleep, how important it is. Stress reduction. Doesn't this sound familiar? It's everything I was talking about in this presentation. Detoxification protocol, right? Make sure you have antivirals and you don't have any kinds of viruses embedded in your system. Zeolite will get rid of that, by the way. Anything that's embedded that's like a hiding virus somewhere, zeolite, I've had amazing luck getting rid of it. So people who've had dizziness for no reason, a lot of times they'll have a virus stuck in their ear and you can get it out with zeolite. I've had really, really good luck. And then, just if you read this, everything we've talked about here, it's all in my presentation. And then so other books that I based my presentation on is that one, and these right here, and these. This one I didn't talk about a whole lot, but it's spectacular. I absolutely love this book. It basically proves that your mental functioning goes through the roof if you can not eat in the morning and exercise first thing before you eat, right? And they proved it with high schoolers. and their scores on all their tests and everything just went up. And so they had the kids sign up and, you know, voluntarily have PE first thing in the morning before they ate, right? And then they compared the differences in their test scores and their grade point averages, and it was spectacular. So if you can get your butt up out of bed and exercise first thing, your cognitive health will go through the roof. It's a really interesting book. It's just fascinating. That's it. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I went over, guys.
Hey, Dan,